20 years later, Tom stood before thousands, voice breaking. I called my wife deadweight and threw her away like trash, but she became a beacon of hope while I stayed the real deadweight. In the crowd, Martha sat beside the daughter he never knew existed, the same girl who'd just inspired thousands with her speech about turning abandonment into strength. The audience held its breath as Martha slowly stood. After 20 years, what would she say to the man who destroyed their family? How did one cruel insult at a county fair transform into this moment of reckoning that would change everything? The county fair buzzed with laughter and music, but Martha's heart felt heavy as lead. She'd been married to Tom for 15 years, and lately, his words cut deeper than winter wind. "Come on, Martha, hurry up," Tom snapped, his voice carrying across the crowded fairground. "You're slower than molasses in January." She clutched her worn purse tighter, trying to keep up with his long strides. Her ankle still ached from last week's fall in the kitchen, but she didn't dare mention it. Not today. "I'm trying, honey," she whispered, but he was already ahead, talking loud with his buddies near the ring toss. "That's my wife for you," Tom announced to anyone listening, his voice thick with embarrassment. "Dead weight, I tell you. Pure dead weight." The words hit Martha like a slap. Around them, neighbors turned to stare. Mrs. Peterson from down the street shook her head sadly. Young couples whispered behind their hands. Martha's face burned with shame. 20 years of cooking his meals, mending his clothes, keeping his house spotless. And this was how he saw her, as nothing but dead weight. She stood there for a long moment, feeling the eyes of the whole town on her. Then, slowly, she lifted her chin and looked Tom straight in the eye. "One day," she said quietly, her voice steady as stone, "you'll remember these words." And with that, Martha walked away through the crowd, leaving Tom standing there with his mouth hanging open. That night, Martha packed her few belongings in silence. Her hands shook as she folded her Sunday dress. The blue one, Tom used to say, made her eyes sparkle. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. She sat at their old kitchen table one last time, the same table where they'd shared morning coffee for 15 years. Now it just felt cold and empty, like everything else in this house. With trembling fingers, Martha wrote a letter. Words poured out. All the hurt, all the hope, all the love she still carried despite everything. She sealed it carefully and slipped it under their bed, where Tom would eventually find it, or so she thought. Dawn broke grey and quiet. Martha walked down Main Street with nothing but a small suitcase and her worn Bible. Mrs. Peterson watched from her window, but Martha kept walking. By noon, Tom came home to an empty house. No smell of dinner cooking, no humming from the laundry room, just silence that echoed off the walls like a slap. "Martha," he called, but only his own voice came back. Days turned to weeks. The whole town buzzed with whispers. Some folks said they'd seen her at the bus station. Others claimed she'd run off with that traveling preacher who'd come through last month. "Poor woman finally had enough," said Mrs. Peterson at the grocery store. Can't say I blame her. But Tom never found the letter. It stayed hidden under their bed, holding secrets that would change everything. If only he knew where to look. 3 months passed, and Martha's disappearance became the town's favorite mystery. Stories spread faster than butter on warm bread, each one wilder than the last. "I saw her begging outside the train station in Springfield," claimed old Mr. Johnson at the barber shop. "Looked thin as a rail, poor soul." But Sarah from the diner shook her head. "No way. My cousin lives over in Millfield, and she swears Martha's got herself a fancy dress shop there. Making good money, too." Tom sat in the corner, nursing his third cup of coffee, listening to every word. Each rumor felt like a knife twisting in his chest. Was she struggling? Was she thriving without him? He couldn't decide which thought hurt worse. Then came the story that really stirred folks up. A traveling salesman stopped by Eddie's gas station, claiming he'd heard the most beautiful voice singing hymns in a tiny roadside church outside Riverside. "Sounded just like that Martha woman y'all been talking about," he said, filling his tank. "Voice like an angel, I tell you." Had the whole congregation in tears. Mrs. Peterson clutched her purse tighter. "That sounds like our Martha. Always did sing pretty at Sunday service." Tom's hands trembled as he set down his cup. Martha singing hymns while he sat here drowning in guilt. The thought made his stomach turn. Whether any of it was true, nobody knew for sure. But every new story just made the mystery deeper, and Tom's regret heavier. Winter came hard that year, and with it, stranger stories about Martha. A truck driver passing through town swore he'd seen a woman matching her description, leading a group of widows in prayer at a community center 2 counties over. She had that same gentle way about her, he told folks at the diner, teaching those poor ladies how to balance their checkbooks and such. Tom's neighbor, Betty, returned from visiting her sister with another tale. There's a woman caring for sick folks at the county hospital. Volunteers every day, they say. Sounds just like Martha's heart. Each story felt like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Tom would lie awake nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering which version was real. Was his Martha out there healing people while he sat here, hollow and bitter? Then came the revelation that shook everyone. Mr. Henderson, who ran the general store, finally spoke up at the church social. "Y'all want the truth? Last Christmas I got an envelope with $50 cash inside, no return address. Just a note saying it was for the orphan fund." He pulled out a worn piece of paper. It was signed the one once called Deadweight. The room fell silent as death. Tom's face went white as fresh snow. Mrs. Peterson whispered what everyone was thinking. If she still remembers those cruel words, what's going to happen when she comes back? Life got better for Tom, at least on paper. His construction business took off like nobody's business. New contracts rolled in, money flowed steady, and folks started calling him Successful Tom instead of just plain Tom. He bought a bigger truck, fixed up the house real nice, even got himself one of those fancy coffee makers Martha always wanted. But success felt empty as a broken promise. Every night he'd sit in that spruced-up house surrounded by all his new things and feel lonelier than a stray dog. The silence was deafening. No humming from the kitchen, no soft footsteps padding around. Just him and his guilt, keeping each other company. Then came the strangest thing of all. Every year on the exact anniversary of that county fair, the day he'd called her dead weight, Tom would find a basket on his doorstep, fresh baked bread, still warm, wrapped in a clean kitchen towel, and always a little note tucked underneath. "The Lord raises the poor from the dust," it read, written in careful handwriting he didn't recognize. The first year he thought it was Mrs. Peterson being kind. The second year he figured it was the church ladies taking pity, but when he asked around, nobody claimed to know anything about it. Tom would hold that bread and stare at those words until his eyes burned. Who was sending this? And why did it feel like both a blessing and a judgment? 2 years passed and the town split right down the middle about Martha. Half the folks figured she'd died somewhere far from home, probably alone and heartbroken. The other half believed she'd started fresh, maybe remarried some kind man who appreciated her gentle ways. Her name became something close to legend around those parts. Young wives would whisper, "Don't let your husband treat you like Tom treated Martha." And old-timers would shake their heads saying, "That poor woman deserved so much better." Tom felt the weight of every conversation, every sideways glance. He'd become the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters, "Marry a man who cherishes you, not one like Tom Henderson." Then came the discovery that got everyone talking again. A bunch of teenagers cleaning out the old community center found something peculiar in a forgotten storage chest. Hand-stitched linens, pillowcases, tablecloths, kitchen towels, all sewn with the most beautiful needlework anyone had seen in years. Each piece was signed in tiny, careful stitches. M.H., Mrs. Peterson examined them with tears in her eyes. Martha always did the finest needlework in 3 counties. These looked just like her handiwork, but how did they get there? When were they made? And why were they hidden away like buried treasure? The discovery changed everything. Folks stopped asking where Martha had gone and started asking something far more unsettling. When was she coming back? Because now it felt certain she would return. The town's annual harvest festival was in full swing when it happened. Main Street buzzed with families, kids running between booths, and the sweet smell of funnel cake filling the air. Just like that county fair from 5 years ago. But this time, everything was about to change. Tom stood near the apple cider stand watching families laugh together when the crowd suddenly went quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole world. That's when he saw her. Martha walked down Main Street like she owned it, head held high, wearing a simple blue dress that made her look stronger somehow. Her hair was different, shorter, more confident, and there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Peace, maybe, or purpose. But she wasn't alone. Beside her walked a young woman, maybe 20 years old, with Martha's same gentle smile and determined chin. The girl looked around with curious eyes, taking in everything like she was seeing it for the first time. "Mama, is this the place you told me about?" the young woman asked, her voice carrying clear across the silent street. "Mama," the word hit Tom like lightning. Mrs. Peterson dropped her caramel apple. Old Mr. Johnson's jaw fell open. Even the kids stopped running around to stare. Martha had returned, but she'd brought someone with her, someone who called her Mama. And that secret was about to turn everything upside down. Tom's knees nearly buckled when he realized the truth. This young woman, this daughter, was walking proof of the life he'd thrown away, the life he'd called dead weight. The crowd pressed closer, sensing drama about to unfold. Martha stood tall, her hand resting protectively on the young woman's shoulder. "My name is Sarah," the girl said, her voice clear and strong. "And this is my mama, Martha Henderson." Henderson. She'd kept his name even after everything. Tom's face went pale as winter snow. His hands shook like leaves in a storm. How could this be? When had Martha? Sarah looked directly at him, those familiar eyes burning with purpose. "Mama told me all about this place, about the man who called her dead weight in front of everyone." The crowd gasped. Some folks looked away, embarrassed for Tom. Others leaned in closer. "You know what's funny?" Sarah continued, her voice steady as stone. "That cruel name became our family motto. Every time life got hard, every time people said we couldn't make it, Mama would say, 'Remember, we're supposed to be dead weight. Let's prove them wrong.'" Tom crumbled inside. His success, his money, his big house, none of it mattered now. He was face to face with the consequence of his cruelty, and it had grown up beautiful and strong. But the most unexpected scene was yet to come. Tom stepped forward, tears streaming down his weathered face like rain on a window. The whole town watched as this proud man crumbled into pieces right before their eyes. "Martha," he choked out, his voice breaking like a boy's, I destroyed everything good in my life. I called you dead weight, but I was the one dragging us both down." The crowd held its breath. You could have heard a pin drop in that silence. "I spent 5 years thinking you were gone forever," Tom continued, wiping his eyes with shaking hands. 5 years hating myself for what I said, for what I threw away." He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a worn envelope, yellowed with age. "Just 3 days ago I was cleaning under our bed and found this. The letter you left." Martha's eyes widened. She remembered writing those words through tears that night. Tom's voice cracked as he read aloud. "If you ever repent, you will find me stronger than when you left me." Sarah moved closer to her mother, watching this broken man confess his sins to the whole world. "You were right, Martha. You came back stronger. And I'm still the same coward who hurt the only woman who ever loved me." The festival had stopped completely. Everyone waited to see what Martha would say. But the question hung in the air like smoke. Would she believe his repentance was real? Martha took the letter from Tom's trembling hands, holding it like the precious thing it was. The whole town waited, hearts pounding, for words that would seal this man's fate. She looked out at all those familiar faces, neighbors who'd whispered about her, friends who'd wondered if she was dead or alive. Then she looked at Tom, broken and pleading before her. "5 years ago you called me dead weight," Martha said, her voice steady and clear. "And you know what? In that moment I felt like I was dying inside." Tom's shoulders shook with grief. "But Tom," she continued, tears glistening in her eyes, "I not only forgive you, I thank you." The crowd gasped. Even Sarah looked surprised. "It was in that abandonment that I discovered the strength God gave me. I learned I could help widows balance their books, care for sick folks at the hospital, and raise this beautiful daughter who calls me Mama." Martha smiled through her tears. "You thought you were throwing away dead weight, but God used your cruelty to show me I was pure gold." Then came the moment nobody expected. Sarah stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Tom. This man she'd heard about but never met, this father who'd never held her. "Daddy," she whispered, and the whole town broke down crying. The insult that felt like a curse had become an everlasting testimony of strength, faith, and the miracle of families made whole again. Think about this. How many times have we let someone else's cruel words define us? Martha could have stayed bitter, could have let dead weight become her truth. Instead, she turned that insult into her testimony of strength. What would happen if you took the worst thing someone ever said about you and used it as fuel to become everything God intended you to be? What if your greatest pain became your greatest purpose? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now to continue watching more inspiring stories that will change how you see your own struggles. Your transformation story is waiting to be written.